Hi, Governor.
Hi, Zoe.
Hi, thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be.
So we are talking all things population and trying to grow this state's population. You know, earlier this year, this big report from Citizens Research Council came out. I think it really grabbed a lot of folks' attention, not just like policy wonks and sort of the Lansing insiders,
Right.
But saying Michigan was only second behind West Virginia in population growth.
Yep.
So then in May, there's the Mackinac Policy Conference, and you come out and you create the Growing Michigan Together Council. This idea of trying to grow the state's population, you name the state's first, and actually I believe she also likes to say the country's first chief growth officer.
That's right.
Tell me about this council, tell me why, and what are you looking for?
Well, listen, here's what we know. In the last census, we saw growth, but it was minuscule, and we lost a congressional seat from it. As we are seeing economic growth happen in Michigan, we need people to do the jobs. We want to make sure Michigan's a place where people will come and build their lives, or people will stay here and thrive, and we can get that kind of long-term view and investment. With climate change, the whole world's going to be looking to move to the Great Lakes. That's not a strategic growth initiative. That's a terrible way to grow your population. We've got to combat climate change. But Michigan's got a powerful story to tell, and we got to get better at telling it and make sure that we've got the policies and offerings that talent wants and expects, that business needs to thrive, and it's all connected. And that's why this work's really important. And it's important to take it out of the legislature and out of the governor's office, because it's not about any one person. It's not about any one party. And the work will not be done in 3 years when my term comes to a close. So we got to get serious. We've got to get on the path. And we've got to make sure that we have a strategy to grow our population in a way that enhances everyone's life here.
Well, let's talk about that strategy. At that same announcement, you said we need an all of the above approach. What does that look like to you? What does that mean?
Well, I think nothing's off the table, and that's why I asked John Ricolta and Shirley Stancato, two known leaders, one Republican, one Democratic, one male, one female, one black, one white. This has got to be an approach where every person can see a good quality life in the state of Michigan, can see a path to prosperity, where business can see, yeah, we work hard, we've got a great low cost of living and a high quality of life. That's who we are. That's hallmarks of what we do. We're not really good at telling our story. You know, one of the great things about Michiganders is we're humble. Have you ever met a Texan? Oh my God, all they do is brag about the state of Texas, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. We got to get better at telling our story and make sure that our policies reflect what young talent is looking for and what business needs in order to be successful.
So, you know, I mean, we've heard through some of these policy initiatives, you know, just when you're talking to folks, what at least, you know, young adults want, right? And a lot of it is city and placemaking, it's good jobs, it's affordable housing. I'm curious sort of what you're hoping to hear from this council. I mean, you could have a wish list of, you know, 100 things depending on who you're talking to. What are you really looking forward to hearing?
Well, my hope is that the council has, you know, it is populated with folks with lots of different viewpoints and perspectives and expertise, and I think that's really important. What I'm hopeful is that they throw a blueprint on the table and say, these are the things that are important, and this is how we're going to get there. This is what we think needs to be done, so that we can take that, work with the legislature, determine where whether it's through budget or it's through policy making, have a role to play, and we put those things into effect so that people can see, okay, Michigan's serious. This is a place where I can live the life that I want to live. Michigan is home to 21% of the world's fresh surface waters in these Great Lakes that define this state. It's a huge asset. When you think about living in the, you know, Southwest and the Colorado River drying up, advanced manufacturing needs water. People can't live without water. This is a massive asset, but it's also an unparalleled quality of life. I am always thinking about this company, KLA, whose main headquarters is in Silicon Valley. Headquarters 2 is in Washtenaw County, Michigan. They weren't sure that it would be a great place to recruit to. They're having great success. Rick Wallace, the head of KLA, is maybe the best ambassador for the state of Michigan, because with our higher educational, offerings and the cutting edge work that is being done here. We've got a powerful story to tell, but we've got to do more to ensure that companies like that see that here, and that all the employees that are attracting to Michigan, we're doing that on a much greater scale.
So they're going to, this council, release some of these blueprints by December is what the hope is. You mentioned possibly taking it to the legislature. With anything like this, it's going to need some teeth, right? So whether that is new laws, whether it's funding. I'm curious about, after they release what they think, their recommendation should be, what your role is then in all of this. Do we hear about it in the State of the State address, in your budget recommendation that'll come down in February? All of the above.
You just answered the question for me.
Okay, so next. No.
No, I think that there is probably going to be an important role for state government to play. There could be a role for local governments to play. There are, I think, probably roles for independent, private business to play as well. So I think we've got to look at this as a Michigan blueprint. And that's why I was so thoughtful about making sure that it didn't come from me. Because this work is not going to be done in 3 years. We didn't get here overnight. This is going to be a long-term vision about what we can do. And now is the time to really get serious about laying that groundwork. And that's what I really want to focus on getting done.
Don't want to be the Debbie Downer here in the room, but governor after governor, it seems like, has tried to do this, right? Folks that I've talked to are like, oh yeah, it's absolutely the right thing to try to do. It's the how, and it's the actual, like you say, making it happen. How will this time be different?
Right, I think you're right. I mean, I was in the legislature when Governor Granholm was...
Cool cities.
Right, Richard, Florida, and it's good stuff. But obviously we had a lot of other challenges during that period of time. I know that Governor Snyder spoke to, civility and how do we make Michigan a place where people want to live. I think any governor should be focused on that. But I think right now we've really done an important work of making Michigan policy reflect that this is a state that values all people, that this is a state where you can come and you can make it here in Michigan, no matter who you are, where you come from, how much money you got in your pocket, what part of the world your family came from. None of that matters. Michigan is a melting pot, and it's the greatest strength of this state. It's also got to be a fundamental of where we're headed. So when we enact a law that ensures the LGBTQ community has basic civil rights protections the rest of Michiganders do, that sends a message to young people that we see you, we value you, and whether you are a member of the community or not, this generation expects those fundamental rights to be protected. Same with a woman's ability to make her own choices about her body. Same with the Crown Act, or a state that is leveling the financial barrier that keeps people from getting skills so they can get into good paying jobs. All of these things are really important. And so too is our policy when it comes to climate. Young people are thinking about these issues, and a state that is addressing them, I think, is opening up the conversation.
So there's obviously folks from Lansing all over the state, really, whether it's folks in education, higher education, folks who are concerned about the economy and business. But that's sort of one generation of folks in Michigan, right, who are trying to make sure that a younger generation wants to stay in the state. So I'm curious how this generation who are here and you want to have stay and build families and lives here, how are they going to hear this message, and how can they be at the table in these discussions?
I think, we talked a little bit about Hillary Doe on the front end, our nation's first chief growth officer, and she's really a dynamo, and she's one of those young people we want here in Michigan, and I think has given us some great perspective. And I know that the council's work with all their subcommittees, this has been a part of all of that. We know that young people who are thinking about starting a family are worried about how much debt they carry or whether or not they can have an affordable place to live, what the schools are like for the children that they may or may not bring into the world. And so I think all of these pieces are crucial to our success and are part of the work that is being done right now, and will inform anything and everything that we pursue toward this goal.
Well, let's continue talking about young adults. You're very vocal about that you have two young adult daughters. Yeah. They're in school here in Michigan. I've got to ask, you must have conversations with them about whether they're going to stay after they graduate and whether they're going to move away. I mean, what are those conversations like, and how does that inform your work?
Well, my daughters are 20 and 21, or almost 20 and 21. Got a birthday this week. When the Dobbs decision came out and it was possible that they might not be able to make decisions around their own bodies and healthcare, I know that was threatened to repel them and probably a lot of other young people. My oldest is a gay woman, and not to have full civil rights protections, I would never encourage my child, either of my kids, to live in a state where they didn't have full civil rights and bodily autonomy. And so I'm really proud that we've gotten Michigan finally on the right side of history on these two issues. And I think that that's important. I think they both want to stay in Michigan. They love it here. They may think about going somewhere else for grad school or something. We'll see what happens. But they both want to live in Michigan. They love this state. And so I'm encouraged by that, but I'm not going to take it for granted. And I, like every parent, I hope that's what they do, and I hope not just for them, but for all the young people in their generation who are from Michigan or have come here for school and see what a great place this is.
Well, and you make a good point. I mean, I think there is something for a lot of generation, whether it's this generation or previously, where sometimes you leave, right? Sometimes you leave, and then it's the getting folks to come back and to stay here, which again, I think is what Richard Florida talks so much about.
One of the things he said that was interesting in this last year's Detroit Chamber event up on Mackinac Island was, this notion that we are disproportionately losing more young people than other states is actually not accurate. I thought that was interesting. When it comes to STEM graduates, we are. And so I just share that because that was something that I learned that I was a little surprised by, but also it kind of helps for me clarify some of the effort we need to do domestically to keep Michiganders here.
So Michigan's population has been 10 million for decades. It was always really easy growing up if the question, like in class, was what's the population, because it never changed. It was the easy answer to remember. For someone who's lived in Michigan for all those decades and doesn't quite understand or is going, okay, yeah, what gives? Can you give an example of what the state might look like if we grew 1 million, 10%, or 2 million? Like, how would that benefit someone who isn't at the table having these conversations?
Well, you think about everything from the quality of life investments that we can make, whether it's just something as simple as infrastructure or our clout in Washington, D.C., because we've lost a congressional seat. Or you think about businesses that are looking for workforce, that have good paying jobs, high quality, high caliber jobs that they're looking for the talent. We've got a lot of natural strengths with the highest concentration of engineers in the country per capita. That is a wonderful strength, but we need more. And we've got jobs that we could fill if we kept more of our talent here or drew people into Michigan. Some of the greatest stories that I've heard are just, they're anecdotal, so I don't have a study to share with you, but I met a teacher who moved up from Florida because they didn't like what was happening with regard to curriculum in the state of Florida and how teachers are not appreciated. A woman who moved to Michigan from Ohio with her daughter because she wanted her to have basic autonomy over her body when she grows up. I think that there are stories like that, but the average person in Michigan benefits when our schools have got a growing population, when businesses are looking for places to go where there's a concentration of talent and they make investments. All of this strengthens our economy and improves our quality of life as we look long term.
It's very rare that even a governor who is the chief executive of a state gets to just say how something is going to be. Right, you've got a chamber, two chambers you've got to deal with. There's, stakeholders. There's business community. I'm curious though if you could just sort of wave a magic wand when it comes to population growth. If there was one policy solution that you could just say, here's how it's going to be, what would it be?
I think that's the trick, Zoe. There's not just one. There's just not. if we had a vibrant nightlife for people from 18 to 30 in every town in Michigan. That would be a great selling point, but that doesn't fix all the different things that I think probably contribute to the work that needs to be done. And so, but that would be cool.
I'm hearing a bigger club scene from the governor is definitely.
Not necessarily the first policy I'd lead with, but when you talk about cool cities, wonderful social offerings, places where people can get outdoors and enjoy the outdoors. I mean, these are all aspects to a high quality of life that young people are insisting on, as they should.
Yeah. So finally, recommendations coming out the beginning of December, and then there will be next step after next step. I know that when I was talking to Hillary Doe, again, the Chief Growth Officer, you don't necessarily want to put a number, right, on the population growth. You don't want to say, oh, it's going to be, 5% X, Y, Z. But I'm curious, without necessarily a number, though, what will success look like? How are you going to measure success?
I think success looks like Michigan being a cool place that young people are talking about moving to, that are investigating, where we see growth in terms of movement into the state of Michigan. I think success is Michigan becoming that state where people are like, there's so much cool stuff happening. Or if I'm a climate activist, I want to be somewhere where I can enjoy the outdoors and have access to this water. I think it starts with buzz. I think that's what we're building.
Governor Whitmer, thank you so much.
Thanks, Zoe.
Watch this full story and more at onedetroitpbs.org. Follow us on social media and sign up for our newsletter for the latest news from Southeast Michigan.